All right. So, allow me to start. So, my presentation today is actually my master's thesis, which I just finished last year of July. I survived it while it's pandemic, so it was quite challenging. All right. So the title of my presentation is Classroom Innovation: Addressing English Classroom Needs Through Design Thinking. But what prompted me to do the study? There are several reasons. Number one, of course, the demand of the 21st century, globalization, and of course, the ASEAN or Asian integration, which in our region here in the Asia Pacific, we are a part of the ASEAN organization. So it is really a pressure for us here to level up our quality of education and economic as well. Then, of course, we also have the poor ranking at the Program for International Student Assessment. Unfortunately, I think we really had a very poor score in this assessment. Then we also ranked 49 in the talent competitiveness out of 63 countries. And this is measuring not only the academic quality that we have here, but specifically it would actually deal with the field of English, whether that be reading, speaking, listening, and writing. Then we had a reform in our educational system. We've had the K to 12 curriculum. So we just adopted this. I think it's way back in 2010, and then it was put into law sometime in 2012. And then because of this curriculum enhancement, we also have to undergo the K to 12 review and update because it has been like 5 years already or more. So we are actually undergoing the review and update. So we would also want to improve the learning environment because being a third world country, a developing country, it's actually challenging for us to have enough facilities and adequate learning environment for our learners, most especially for those who are in the outskirts or in the rural areas of the country. Then, of course, we also had upskilling and reskilling of teachers and engagement of stakeholders for support and collaboration. Now, but why did the research or why did I use design thinking? It was my first time to encounter design thinking, and going through it, reviewing the literature, actually interested me in exploring on how we can actually use it in our context, because design thinking is basically used in the fields of engineering, architecture, design, and business. But it's also an emerging trend in Western countries in the educational system. So I was thinking maybe it would be able to somehow contribute to the improvement of our educational system. Um, but then again, where did the term design thinking come from? So it's basically what designers do. They think. So in this context, of course, if, if, if you would come to think of it, it's very simple. But then again, yes, we design things. And when we are designing things, we're also thinking. So we are actually looking at possible things that we can do to improve a certain item or a certain product. Design thinking fosters problem solving skills. It employs empathy. It has ideation, prototyping, and experimentation. It's actually an approach that we can use in any profession. It's linear if you would look at the process, but then again, by nature, it's iterative, meaning to say it doesn't actually follow the step-by-step process. Because from one step, you can actually go back if you feel that you need to improve, and you may actually advance if the things are working well with the process. It's prominent in all walks of life simply because its goal is actually to provide innovative solutions. And many companies in the business sector are actually using this to be able to improve their products. Okay. Um, there's no specific definition to design thinking because it would really depend on the context on how we are going to use design thinking. It's different when we're talking about architecture. It's different when we're talking about engineering. And it's different when we're talking about it in the field of education. But basically, it's innovative because it fosters human centeredness. It puts premium to the experience of the end users. In this juncture, we are actually referring to as the learners who are our end users. We as teachers are providers of education, learning, and our end users are actually the learners. So in this context, what we're trying to do is that we are using the experience of the learner to improve instruction. So this is how design thinking looks like in the process. We have empathize, okay? This is where we actually get or identify the needs of the learners. Then we frame it. We specifically define what's the problem. And then from this part, we move to ideate, which is the fun part because we get to brainstorm, we get to share ideas, we get to connect with each other. But there is a caution in this part. We do not actually use our prior knowledge. Why is that? It's because when we consider our prior knowledge, our schema, or our past experience, we do not now give room for new solutions or for new ideas because we are anchored to our past experience. So when we are using design thinking, we are actually looking at things from a fresh perspective. It's like emptying our cup and then learning from each other and sharing ideas with each other. Then all these ideas, okay, we will translate that into a prototype. You can have as much prototype as you want. And then from that prototype, we test. However, if you would look at it, I discussed it in a linear manner. But then again, if let's say, for example, in the ideation part, you need to go back to defining the problem, you may do that. If you are in the test part and you think you have to go back to the ideation part, you may do that. Okay, because it is a continuous process, but then again, it's also an active process wherein as you go along all the processes, you may still improve. Now, in this context, the researcher or what I did is that I had three specific statements of the problem which I'm trying to answer in this study. Number one is that what are the needs of the students in an English language classroom, which is the empathize part of the design thinking. How can design thinking be applied in the classroom? So I gave a workshop and focus group discussion as well with the teacher participants and what prototype can help address the identified needs of the students. This is the end product of the participants. However, I would like to put caution in this because the data gathering process took place on the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so there were a lot of limitations, especially here in our country. On the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, all transactions were stopped. We were not allowed to have face-to-face interaction. And there was actually a limitation in terms of the use of technology because we were all taken by surprise. So the original number of participants, the ideal number of participants was not achieved because of the limitation in terms of face-to-face interaction and at the same time of technology because we were really not prepared. I know that nobody's prepared for this, but then again, here in the Philippines, we were not yet that inclined too much into online learning. So we are adopting it, we are implementing it, but it's not on a full scale. That's why not all of us were actually ready for that. Um, I, as a researcher, I looked at this from the pragmatic point of view, wherein there is something that needs to be improved at a certain point, and it needs to work. Okay, because I believe that what we have now is not working. So from the pragmatic point of view, we need to improve these things, and there is a need to address the need immediately. So congruent to design thinking, according to Land, the desired results of design thinking is to change what is currently working into something that meets the user's needs and to improve the experience. So at this case, the needs of the learners were identified and it's there. perspective of the kind of English language classroom that they have. And so using this design thinking and aligning it with the pragmatic point of view, we would have to improve this. We would have to have a change in terms of what we are currently doing. So this is supposed to be this is the conceptual framework. So if you would see at the first part of it is actually the learner's needs and the policies that actually require them or is required for them to meet the competencies. And then through this, we identified the needs and then had the design thinking process. After that, the product of their design thinking is going to be implemented in the classroom as a classroom innovation. And then for implementation, and of course, as I said, it's an active process. So we have to undergo the same cycle again. However, again, as a caution, because of the limitation, we did not reach the test part. But in lieu of the test part, what we did is that we had the output evaluated by English teachers teaching in a higher level and who have gone through teaching the junior high school level, which is the origin of our participants in the study. So the participants, because they were reduced, we only had 6 grade 10 junior high school students. Why were they grade 10 students from private and public schools? Because they have gone through the complete cycle of the junior high school level, which is from grade 7 to grade 10. And then we also had 4 junior high school English teachers who have taught in various levels from grade 7 to grade 10, and 2 English teachers who are teaching in the higher level, specifically senior high school, which is grade 11 and 12, and 1 in the tertiary, both majoring English and have taught in the junior high school as well, so that they would also have a grasp and an idea of what it is to teach in the junior high school. So the location of the study is in Cavite, Philippines. That's the nearest province in the capital, which is Manila. And it took place on the onset of COVID-19. So the test part, as mentioned earlier, was not achieved because of the limitations that we've had. It was really a struggle. I wanted to gather the students, but then again, I was already given the warning by the principal that I cannot enter the school. I tried to convene them online, but a majority of them really had difficulties accessing internet. And even if I provide them with a pocket Wi-Fi or a connection, it's not really possible because of their geographical location. And so I had to employ convenient sampling for the study. Okay, so it's a qualitative research and particularly a case study, specifically a single case study, and I used content analysis to process the data. So we had focus group discussions. There were 2 sets. Number 1 is for the students. Then second is for the teacher participants. And then these were the instruments that I used. Of course, the guides for the teachers and the students. And then field notes, of course, during the focus group discussion sessions. This is the data gathering procedure, but then again, for the recruitment of the participants, as mentioned earlier, it did not push through because of the limitations encountered by the researcher. So documentary analysis, of course, we've taken themes from the context on where the discussants are coming from. So what is their experience in their classrooms? And from these ideas, from these experiences, we've clustered them into themes. So these were the themes that we were able to draw out of the context of the learners. Number 1, they believe that there is a need for a positive learning environment in their schools or in their classroom. A need for varied teaching strategies and technology integrated instruction, the use of appropriate assessment, and the need for real-life application of the target language. So these were what the learners think is missing inside their classroom. This is what they believe that they do not have in their classrooms based from their experience. And this is the empathy part of the study. Now, from the empathy part, the teachers framed and identified the specific problem, and then we had brainstorming on how we could possibly address these needs. We've thought of ideas on how we would be able to concretize these ideas, these concepts that we have to address these needs. But unfortunately, we were not able to reach the test part. But we were able to make a prototype, which I will show later. So when we apply design thinking in the classroom as an assessment or as a form of assessment or developing an assessment tool, the teachers also had their experience of the design thinking. And from their perspective, using design thinking in the classroom allows them to value the experience of the learners because we are putting premium to what they've experienced in the classroom. What do they think of how the teacher teaches? What do they think of the teacher's assessments of the kind of learning environment that they have? And they believe it fosters collaboration because it's not only with the teachers that we are collaborating, it's also with the learners. And yes, there are evaluation tools that are used in different schools, but then again, if I may say, but this may not be true to all, but we sometimes use the evaluation tool to evaluate the teacher on whether we will rehire the teacher or whether the teacher is good in teaching. But we are not actually using these evaluative materials to evaluate the instruction and how we can further improve instruction. And so in design thinking, we infuse that idea that this is how the clients perceive the way we teach. So can we improve? Can we develop through their experience? So that's actually one very good aspect of design thinking. Then problem solvers through creative and critical thinking because we brainstorm, we welcome ideas, we think out of the box. We think of the impossible, but then again, we try also these impossible things on whether they will be workable or not. Because design thinking believes that we should continuously test, test, and test, and then reject if they do not work. But if they work, then let's continue and develop it. And it provides innovative solutions because we are infusing at this part the experience of the learners, and it's not only based on our perspective as experts, because of course we believe that as teachers we know our classrooms, we know how to deliver lectures, we know how to deliver and what the students need. But then again, have we ever thought of asking our learners, what do you need? How do you want to learn? What do you think will make you learn? And so from design thinking, putting premium into the human experience, we now infuse it in improving our instruction, improving our assessment, our policies, our curriculum. And lastly, it initiates educational transformation. Because in this lecture, I'm sorry, in this research, we only use the learners. But in actuality, we can actually tap all the stakeholders, the community, the parents, industry partners, and identify what is needed by these people. How can we improve our instruction, our curriculum, our policy? And this allows us now to infuse all of these things in our classrooms. So this is the actual rubric. So the prototype that the teachers came up with is a rubric. In the Philippines, we have what we call as performance task. The performance task is actually a culminating activity which measures all the competencies that the learners have gained in a specific grading period. We have four: first grading, second grading, third grading, and fourth grading period. So it's quarterly. Now, for every grading, there is a performance task, and this performance task evaluates what the learners have gained in the process. Now, what the discussants think of, which is missing in this performance task, is actually improvisation, allowing learners to be able to freely express themselves, allowing the learners to maximize their potential, and allowing the learners to be able to hone whatever skills that they already have. And that is going back to the SOP number one, which all the needs were actually laid down based from the student's perspective. And from this, the teachers, the discussants came up with this learning rubric, which will be infused. It's not going to be a standalone rubric. It will be infused in the actual rubric that they use in the classroom. So this is an added category. Um, and then this was evaluated by our by two teachers who are teaching in the higher level. And this is what they think of it. They believe that the key concept Ideate believes that a positive classroom setup is necessary for learning. Gone are the days, of course, that teachers are the actual source of information, or they actually the ones who are actually I'm sorry, from rote learning, we are now in the student centeredness. We are now practicing student centeredness, allowing learners to be able to um, have a self-directed learning, and allowing them to keep on talking as well using the language. So gone are the days which the teacher is the sole source of information. And so using design thinking, it fosters also the 21st century skills: critical thinking, creative thinking, collaboration, and communication. And so the second teacher said that design thinking is a way to create better classrooms and learning environments for students. It also taps on the 21st century skills or abilities that students need to develop to succeed in this information age. The process involved in design thinking promote, as mentioned earlier, and furthermore, design thinking will lead to educational transformation simply because we are now taking into consideration and infusing the ideas and feelings of our clientele, which is the learners. So design thinking provides promising innovation solutions in addressing problems in the classroom and may be utilized as a process in improving academic learning. This is not only limited to assessment, it can actually be used and applied also in policy making, curriculum development, um, instruction, and in the learning process that we are actually delivering in our classrooms. So recommendation is that design thinking exhibits the potential to provide innovative solutions. Thus, it suggests that in improving the curriculum, instruction assessment, leadership, classroom management, and systems and policies, design thinking may be applied. It just really needs to, it's a matter of sitting down and taking and finding time to be able to lay down and do the design thinking process. So it's an innovative solution, of course, putting premium into this learner's experience. So we are using that as our primary source, as a drive for innovation. So it actually advocates the use of the concrete experience of the learner. Again, it's basically focusing on our learners' experience in the classroom. We really have to start from that and then infuse it in our development, in our improvement, in our instruction, and all the aspects of our field. So it's a process of going back to the end user's experience and cultivate change that will introduce innovation. So, of course, it's beneficial to the stakeholders because of its human centeredness. So, if we take care of our clientele, if we take care of our learners, of course, they are more to learn, absorb the things that we're teaching them. They would be able to learn the target language. They would have a better learning experience because we have secured and we have infused their thoughts, their feedbacks into improving our instruction. So of course, because both had a reflective experience, the teacher, the learner, even the stakeholders, um, it comes to the point wherein we would be able to really say that there is collaboration in improving our service to our learners. So with that, thank you very much. Maraming salamat. I hope I've earned the privilege of your time and I was able to make sense of what I am sharing today. Thank you very much.
Reynolds, perfect.